Welcome back to the Balanced Hormones Empowered Women podcast. I'm your host, Abby Vallejo, registered dietitian, certified personal trainer, and health coach. And I specialize in female-focused nutrition, diet, and lifestyle. I help women in perimenopause balance their hormones, lose body fat, and get more energy. So hormones are one of my absolute favorite topics, and I'm so excited to have my good friend and colleague, Christine, with me today. She is an expert in nutrition and lifestyle coaching for women. She's also a marketing specialist for healthcare practitioners. We're both very into natural and holistic things. So I was really excited to get her on today. We are going to be talking about PCOS and her journey healing PCOS naturally. And I think this is such an important topic because this is something that so many women, it's one of the most common hormonal disorders that affect women today. It's also one of the most common causes of infertility. So PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome. And the thing to know about is that most women that have it are actually go undiagnosed and may go for years experiencing these symptoms, which we'll talk about what those are in a minute, before they actually get a diagnosis. So this can be a really challenging thing to deal with. More than half of women with PCOS also deal with obesity, but not necessarily. Women with PCOS also often have a higher risk of developing blood sugar problems and type 2 diabetes. And there are three main criteria for diagnosing PCOS. So you have to have 2 out of the 3 in order to get a diagnosis. So the 3 criteria are that you're either not ovulating and not getting a period, or your periods are irregular. So the average woman's monthly cycle is about 28 days long. Now it can be a little shorter, a little longer, anywhere from like 26 to 34 days is considered normal, right? But if you're going more than 35 days every month or having less than 8 cycles in a year, that could be a criteria for PCOS. Elevated testosterone, so high levels of DHEA or testosterone, and you'll know because you might experience symptoms like acne or, like facial hair growing in, body hair, excess body hair for women, maybe even things like anger and aggression. I always say, think of a guy on steroids, right? A guy that's jacked up on steroids. What are the symptoms he's going to be having? He's probably balding. He's probably angry. He's probably aggressive. He's probably got acne, right? Your hair might be thinning. And then the third criteria is the polycystic ovaries, right? So these would be found on an ultrasound. 12 or more small follicles of 2 to 9 millimeters in diameter on one ovary would be a criteria. So having 2 out of the 3, you might not necessarily have all 3. You might even not have the polycystic ovaries at all, but if you have 2 out of 3, you can be diagnosed. So let's talk a little bit more about the symptoms. The symptoms of PCOS can include things like irregular periods. So like I said, you might not be getting a period, or they might be wildly irregular. When you do have a period, it might be really heavy or really painful or last longer than it normally would. You might be having those symptoms that I just mentioned of too much testosterone. So if you're getting that facial hair, and I'm not just talking about that one chin hair, right? Like ladies, I think we all have that one little hair that grows on our chin. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like excessive, like whisker kind of thing, or getting hair on your body. Acne on your face or your body that's excessive. Thinning hair, male pattern baldness, like I said, cysts, weight gain, right? Because insulin resistance is a big part of this. So if you have diabetes, insulin resistance, trouble with your blood sugar, that makes it harder to lose weight. So you might have weight gain or trouble like resistance to weight loss. Fatigue, you might also have mood issues. So these are a list of symptoms that you might be experiencing. But now I want to hear from you, Christine, because this is something that you've dealt with and healed in your life. And I'm so anxious to hear your journey. So let's go back, and maybe you want to start at the beginning. Like, when did you first kind of start? What symptoms were you having? And when did you kind of figure out that it was PCOS?
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey. It's a lot. It's quite a long story. Like I said,
Yeah.
last time we spoke, just sharing the short of it was like half an hour explaining
Mm-hmm.
that drama. But basically, it was quite bad from the start. So I was a late bloomer. I only went through puberty or started puberty a few months before I turned 16. But the periods were very heavy and extremely painful from the start. I
Mm.
mean, just like to explain a story where, though, I remember very clearly one day in typing class where I could barely sit up. and I wasn't even doing any work. I was just sitting there. I could barely sit up. And the teacher was like, if you're not going to work, you have to sweep the floor. I was like, what? Are you ridiculous? But I was so embarrassed, like, I don't want to tell her what I was experiencing. Like, I'm not just sitting here lazy. I literally cannot stand at all. And that was so bad. So we eventually, I went to see my GP with my mom, but he was so uninformed. He just put me on birth control. Like he could literally have given me a pain medication, like here's a prescription for pain meds, but he went straight to that. Like no other reason but to control my pain, nothing else. So that obviously started a whole cascade of other things that just skyrocketed the situation. And I was on it way too long. He did not tell me anything about it. Just, this will take away your period, so you won't have any of this.
So you weren't getting a period at all then when you were on the birth control?
Yeah, I was on, I think there were two versions. One is Meno something, I can't even remember the name. One is Depo-Provera. That's the one I was on. And the other one was Neuroesterate. I think that's the other version. My mom was on that one. So the one is for more adult women, mature women, and Depo is for, most people. But still, even that is not meant for teenagers at all. Like you're not supposed to be on it before you have kids. That's how strong it is. It can affect your fertility from a young age. But we didn't know anything about that. He did not give us any information, just this will take away your period. You won't have any issues with pain. But yeah, that was, even with that, I had symptoms. So all that did was I didn't get a period while I was on it. When I left school, I found out I only supposed to use it 5 years maximum. I found that out in year 5, so I stopped taking it immediately. Went onto birth control pill, but had many issues with that. I think I only used 1 or 2 different types, but I had issues with that as well. But to answer your question, the symptoms that I had, that I later found out was PCOS, and not just every woman experiences this, was eventually I skipped 3 months of periods twice, but that was only before I got diagnosed. All of the time that I was facing this syndrome, that I wasn't aware of that I had this, I did struggle with my weight. I picked up weight very easily. All my weight was basically around my midsection. So, some girls would get a big bum, or they'll pick up weight in the whole body. I kind of looked skinny. My arms everywhere looked skinny. It's just like a tube.
No, just in the tummy.
So that's where I would immediately, when I picked up weight, I don't really want to call it weight. It's more just excess fat, just fat. So it was just, they went there immediately. I definitely, the moods, I didn't know it was that back then. I just thought, she's a moody person. That's what I thought. I was just part of my personality. What was it? The hair. I don't really know. I think it was facial hair. Still now, that's something that's gone better, but it hasn't gone away completely. So like here, I have to tweeze every couple of days, and like around my eyes, I get a lot of hair growth. And here, definitely, that's basically shaving every couple of days.
No, I get it. I mean, I don't have PCOS, but I do tend to have a little bit higher levels of testosterone, just kind of, I think it's maybe just my predisposition. And I definitely have like the little
No, but mine gets really bad because it's dark hairs. So like it's not like my mom's blonde hair. No one really cares, because you're not gonna look like this at your face. But you can see it clearly. Like on a camera, you can't necessarily see it. But like literally in front of me in person, you can clearly see it. So I have to tweeze or shave every couple of days. I did wax it at one point, and I used the hair removal lotion, but until I realized it was really, really bad for you, all those
Yeah.
chemicals.
Yeah.
So yeah, hair growth was a part of it. Cysts on my ovaries was a clear symptom.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, when after I had my first, I had secondary infertility. So after I gave birth, it came back again, and I had secondary infertility. So yeah, and also the blood sugar control problems, that's still a thing. So
Hmm.
I get really bad brain fog when I don't eat right. For me,
Hmm.
other people, it's like, okay, you eat normal, that should be okay. But for me, it's not okay.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so brain fog is a big problem. Fatigue, like I just want to fall asleep. Like I can sit here and fall asleep immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes
So,
sense with the blood sugar, right? Because if we have
yeah,
dysregulated blood sugar, your cells literally think they're starving, even though you're eating, because the energy is not going inside the cells where it needs to go. It's just in the blood. So yeah, that makes perfect sense that you would feel hungry and tired and not have enough energy because, that it's not going where it needs to go.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so those are the primary symptoms that when I came to my doctor, obviously the only symptoms I knew about that she asked me only about the defining symptoms. So
Yeah.
I did confirm those, which is she checked out my weight, and obviously she could see where I was carrying fat.
Hmm.
I was lucky that it was only moderate at that stage, so she caught it very early.
Yeah.
um, I'm very thankful for, because I didn't have to lose as much as some of the other patients.
Hmm.
And I was able to, like, within 11 months, I lost 10%, because she told me, uh, I recommend you lose 10, because that's what most of my patients come to me. They make changes to their lifestyle and fitness habits. They lose 10%, they fall pregnant very easily. So if you can just lose 10%, that will make a massive difference, because obviously that excess hormones that is stored in your fat cells. So as
Yeah.
soon as that is released, the hormones are released, you
Yeah.
obviously will initially get a surge in your blood because it's being
Hmm.
released in your blood, but then it
Yeah.
goes away eventually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that helped me. 11 months after I started, I was like full on from the start, and I was able to fall pregnant 11 months after I made those changes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I definitely want to talk about your fertility journey. I just want to, I had a little comment in my head that I wanted to say about the birth control is that I think it's such a shame that, because this is, you're in South Africa, I'm in the US. I think this is a common phenomenon where girls go in and they have, symptoms or an irregular period or painful heavy periods, and they just get put on birth control, like by default, like, oh,
Yeah.
you're irregular. Oh, you're having heavy periods, birth control. And then, like you were saying, it suppresses it. It doesn't actually fix anything. So
Mm.
I have seen so many women who have been on birth control for years because they were having some type of hormonal imbalance, some type of problem, come off birth control because maybe they're just done, they want to get it out of their system, or they want to have kids. That birth control, or maybe they're even about to go through menopause. So they're like, okay, I don't need to be on birth control anymore. Those problems that were pre-existing before the birth control will still be there, and they will come back out. So if you haven't done,
With
if
a
you're just on,
vengeance.
yeah, yeah, with a vengeance, exactly. I had a client that she had been on birth control for years because of endometriosis and severe estrogen dominance. She would get these really heavy periods. She decided finally she wanted to get off the birth control and go naturally. I kind of warned her, like, hey, your period's going to come back, and it's going to come back with a vengeance, and then we'll rebalance it, but just be prepared. She bled when it came back. It took like 2 or 3 months after she got off for it to come back. She bled for 36 days straight. Heavy.
That's
Like,
terrible.
we had to put her on iron because she was bleeding so much. And then we were able to, like, bring in the natural things to balance it. Now she's totally fine, rebalanced, but it can come back with a vengeance. And that's just your body saying, hey, you didn't actually heal me. All these problems still exist. We're just suppressing them. So I just kind of wanted to make that note of, there's not the perfect solution for women, but just know if you're on birth control and you went on birth control to address hormonal symptoms, those hormonal symptoms are still there. They haven't been fixed. So
Mm.
now I definitely want to talk about your fertility journey. So I know you started talking about it. So that's why you went to that second doctor when she was helping you lose that 10%. That was on a
Yeah.
journey to become
Yeah.
pregnant.
So basically what happened, the first time I skipped 3 months period, I went to a male gynecologist. I don't want to be prejudiced. I don't want to say it's because of his age, but he was really ill-informed. He
Hmm.
just did an internal, what do you call it? What's the word?
Like
Internal
the exam, or he did like
exam. Yeah, he
yeah.
just did an internal exam and listed my symptoms and had a short discussion and said, you know, there's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. It's in your head. Like he basically told me in as many words, you are broody. That's why these symptoms are being manifested. It's in your head.
Oh,
That's it.
that's so frustrating.
The kicker is my symptoms, all of my symptoms were at their height, like at their worst ever.
Yeah.
They would never be as bad as they were at that stage.
And you had the
Later,
textbook symptoms
any
of
time in my
PCOS.
yeah, any time in my life, they were not as bad as when I went to it.
And he said they were just all in your head.
Yes.
Oh,
So I can't remember if he gave me, I think he gave me like regular birth control and he said that will bring back your period. No, because I can't remember whether I was on, no, I wasn't on birth
and like,
control.
what was his plan there? Because if you went in because you were wanting to get pregnant and he's giving you birth control as a solution, like how in in his mind, like how is that going to work?
I don't know exactly. But I know he gave me something. But a few years before that, I stopped birth control completely because it was really, was having really bad side effects. Like I picked up weight with, I was on, what was it? I can't remember the name, but it's extremely popular where I live.
Okay.
And that was actually making me pick up weight. Like, so my symptoms are actually getting worse on that birth control. So you must know if it's that bad that birth control even it doesn't do anything. And my moods were getting really bad. Like even people at work were saying, this is not like that. You're
Yeah.
not being normal. This is not normal, Christine. You are
Yeah.
being and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
even more stubborn and outspoken than you're supposed to be, like normal. So someone at work only actually told me, an older woman, she told me that it could actually be your birth control. So I decided, let me just go off it completely. And I was off immediately for 3 years. So I think he gave me something else. I don't think I would have gone onto birth control again after those bad reactions, but I know it was conventional medication that he put me on.
Yeah.
But then shortly after, I skipped three periods again, and I did some more research to find a better gynecologist. And I went to a woman, not because it's a woman, but because her bio on the hospital website said she specialized in high risk pregnancies. And she is much younger, so I thought, okay, maybe she's a bit more queued up. I'll give it a chance.
Yeah.
And I went to her, and it turned out that she had a lot of patients who had PCOS, and she was very informed. She had actually gone to a few seminars on the topic, and she told me, and actually in our country, it's quite a new thing. So according to her, it had only been in the past 20 years that this had become known in her profession. That was basically non-existent, or it wasn't, whoever decided this is the thing. It happened like a couple of decades ago. It wasn't very long established syndrome.
Well,
basically.
that makes sense, because those 3 criteria that I listed in the beginning, those are the Rotterdam criteria, and those are only from 2003. So I mean, only that's, just over 20 years ago, but still, like that tracks with what you just said, like kind of in our radar for the past 20 years, but not much longer than that.
Yeah. So she was so kind. She didn't immediately go to medication or birth control. She was amazing, and she said, we're going to tackle this with lifestyle changes. She gave me a lot of great information with diet that still tracks for me. The only thing that she didn't, that I know now that she didn't discuss with me at that point, maybe she didn't know, or she didn't believe in it, was limiting carbs and limiting sugar. She did say sugar is a problem, but she didn't say cut all processed sugar or added sugar. And she also, she did say go low GI. So that's basically low GI, high protein. She said, okay, that's basically the guidelines with diet. And she said, you need to exercise, but do more weights than cardio. And I want you to work out consistently at least 4 times a week. That's how we're going to tackle it. And try and lose 10% of your body fat. That was the goal. So she was great. She also, at that stage, the absence of my period was a problem, because she said that does, if you don't have regular periods, that does carry health risks. So we want to get your period back as soon as possible. So she put me on a herbal remedy, which is Eve Care, Himalaya Eve Care. So it's just a blend of herbs, basically. Really great. Within a month, I got my period back, and I eventually added more herbs to the regimen. I did go off Eve Care right after my period came back, because I don't believe in taking supplements like indefinitely just because.
Like long term,
So
well, I
I
think
said,
herbs too, especially like herbs are different from saying like you're taking a vitamin D every day or you're taking magnesium.
exactly.
Like herbs are usually more of a short-term thing where you're like taking them therapeutically instead of a medicine to address something. And then when it's fixed, a lot of times you don't need to be on that herb anymore. I mean, it depends on the herb and the class, but I completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. So I found a couple of other things that also helped a lot, like maca root powder is what was a tremendous help. That's really made my periods much lighter and much less painful. So that was a major thing that helped me tremendously. Relieved a lot of the symptoms. For me, the most problematic symptoms were just the heavy periods and painful periods. So the maca root really helped with that. And as you may know, low libido is also a huge problem. Like it's something that most women, it's really odd to me. Like I'm sure there are PCOS types, because I was on a support forum for quite some time, for a couple of years, specifically for PCOS, people with PCOS, women with PCOS rather. And a lot of them said their libido was like crazy high. So there were a lot of women who said very low to 0. And then there were another group that said extremely high. Like I've never had a partner with, it's actually a problem in my relationship. So I'm sure there are types of PCOS because of that, because there's such a stark difference. Anyway, it was that and the heavy periods. And but thankfully the absence of period was only those 2 times that I ever had a problem with that. But it was 3 months each time, which is really long.
That is. So you said you did the herbs for a while. Now, did you kind of go off of those and then fall pregnant, or like how did kind of that timeline go? And then what did you do after your first pregnancy? Because I know that sometimes that can cause, hormonal imbalances like a pregnancy, and then come, kind of rebalancing the hormones after that. How did you kind of deal with that?
So I didn't use maca like forever. I was like off and on as my symptoms, and as I was starting to manage my health better, everything was getting milder. I was like, okay, this isn't as much a problem anymore. I just took it supplementally from time to time, because it did help with, like I said, with other things, not just with the periods. 11 months after, like the month I was diagnosed, I started the lifestyle changes, and I was super consistent and committed. 11 months after that first month, I fell pregnant.
That's amazing.
And I had a really healthy pregnancy. After I had my son, I didn't struggle as much with the weight, because I was already in that healthy lifestyle. Throughout my pregnancy, I was working out, like until 2 weeks before I had my son. I was working out obviously not as strenuously because you're not supposed to work out at that high level. But I was eating very healthily. I didn't have really hectic cravings. It was my easiest pregnancy of all three. And I had a really easy birth, really calm, no problems breastfeeding after. So I was, I think really because of my healthy lifestyle and fitness, I was really active. That helped with the birth, and it helped my postpartum.
For sure.
But yeah, so after that initial postpartum period, I didn't struggle as much with my weight. So that wasn't something that really came back hectically after that. But I did struggle a little bit with blood sugar control, because I remember a couple of times sitting outside with my son while I was playing like in the sand pits or whatever. I was like basically falling asleep. And it was not because I was tired from lack of sleep. It was because of my diet, but I didn't realize it at the time. It's only years later that I realized, okay, this is a major issue. There's certain foods that I just cannot eat most of the time. I did still eat my favorite foods from time to time. I'm not someone who believes like you have to cut out everything 100% of the time, because for me personally, I can't sustain a healthy lifestyle if it's super drastic. Like, you can never ever eat this food ever again, because then
it has to be
you'll end up
sustainable.
craving it much more frequently.
Yeah, no, deprivation never works. What were some of the foods that made the biggest difference when you cut them out of your diet?
Ultra processed carbs, high glycemic carbs like pasta and like regular bread, like the processed bread with the 10-20 ingredients, not homemade bread or sourdough or rye. Those breads I can still eat, like really, and bread with lots of seeds, like thicker bread with lots of seeds, high fiber. Still now, when I buy bread, I look at the fiber content and the protein content to make sure, okay, you know, what am I eating? And I can tell if it's something that keeps me fuller for longer. I know this is a good option for me. I need to choose this more often. So, and also certain vegetables, like we traditionally in our traditional food, pumpkin is something that we like with a Sunday dinner, with a Sunday roast. There's usually something like pumpkin. We like to have something sweet, like a sweet dish. That's not great, but I've learned that if I have a lot of protein in my diet, I can have those things in addition, like within the same meal. As long as you have your protein first, that really helps
keep your blood sugar balanced.
Your blood sugar. So yeah, I've learned a lot of tricks over the years, but it's from trial and error. Like, I'll do research, I'll learn something, and then I test it out, and I say, okay, this really works for me, and you know, that's how you take it forward. So I've done another thing I wanted to talk to you about, but I want to share that I know has made a massive difference, that I know people don't talk about enough, especially with regard to managing hormones, is toxins. Like toxins.
I'm so glad you're bringing that up.
Cannot ever talk about that enough. It's everywhere. It's in everything. But that's not a reason for us to be like, I cannot win because it's in everything. That is not a great mindset, because then you're never going to make any changes.
I'm always telling people, like, there's so many toxins in this world, but focus on what you can control, like things in the home. You can control that, and that will be enough to make a difference. So when I started to learn that and started to make changes, that has made massive difference. Biggest thing that I tell everyone, as soon as someone tells me I have really heavy periods, I tell them, get rid of your disposable period products immediately and get a menstrual cup. Like get something like that is like medical grade silicone, that doesn't add even more endocrine disrupting chemicals into your body. That's so important. It's made a world of difference. Like, I cannot tell you how it's like going from a pain level with, like, specifically with periods, pain level 7 down to pain level 2. Wow.
Within from one cycle to the next.
That's
Not even over
amazing.
time. Like the moment you put it in, it's immediate. That is an immediate effect.
That's
So
amazing.
it's massive. The only time ever after I made that switch that I used disposable period products was when in my postpartum period, like immediate
Yeah.
postpartum with that heavy bleeding, because the the washable period products are where I live very expensive. And you know, it's such an overwhelming time. You're so exhausted. You don't want one other thing. Like
Yeah.
with me now having 3 kids, you don't know the amount of laundry I have to do
Oh
every
yeah.
day.
Yeah, for
It's
sure, for
crazy.
sure. I
But
can't even imagine.
having to deal with that and knowing you have to do it personally, like yourself.
Mhm.
Everyone else going to be too grossed out.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta watch those things yourself. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
just coming back to what we were saying about how, PCOS has really only been on the radar screen for the past 20-ish years. I think what you said about toxins is so relevant because think about it, generations ago, our grandparents and great grandparents and so on, they didn't have the amount of toxins and chemicals in their lives that we do today. So I'm thinking that toxins are such a huge driver of hormonal conditions like
It
PCOS
is.
because
Yes.
we're all exposed to them, even if we don't think we are. I mean, think about just everything comes in plastic. We're exposed to plastic. We spray pesticides on all of our foods. They're in our water supply. The cars have pollution. There's heavy metals. Like, even if you're not actively thinking that you're being exposed to these things in our modern world, we all are getting exposed to them. And so it just makes so much sense that with that intense increase in exposure, we also see a correlating increase in the amount of PCOS and hormonal problems and infertility and like declining sperm counts in men and all of those things because of how toxic our world has become, which is really depressing. But again, that's why I always say it's just important to know, and then we focus on what we can control, because as you were just saying, you made a difference in 1 month from one cycle to the next just by removing those period products and some of the toxins in your environment. So, for the listener who might be feeling a little overwhelmed and, kind of, oh my God, this is so overwhelming and doomsday, you can make a difference. Look at Christine turn it around in just a month. So that's so reassuring to know. It gives us so much hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's often the simplest changes. And yeah, sometimes it does bring in a little bit of inconvenience into your life. You know, people will be grossed out. Um,
But you know what I always say? Like, convenience is killing us. The thing that's killing us is
yes,
the convenience.
100%. That
Yeah.
is such a big problem in our life.
Yeah.
Like the more convenience you add into your life, those conveniences, there's always a trade-off.
Mm-hmm.
Like what are you trading? You know,
Yeah.
I would rather some inconvenience in my life and have a health span and health quality, you know, a longer
Exactly.
life and a high quality life.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm just thinking like just an easy example, like we were talking about bread, like a good quality homemade, like seeded bread, maybe sourdough or something like that. It takes a little more effort to make and everything, but versus buying some just like ultra processed white bread from the store that you could leave it out and it doesn't mold for years, and it's
Oh,
like, what's the trade-off? How many chemicals are in that? Yeah, all I had to do was buy it and eat it, but what kind of consequences is that having on my body over time? Is it really worth it? I don't think it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So what about then how did it go with your other two pregnancies? Was it kind of similar to the first one, or was there anything else that you had to change, or with how you were managing?
Well, between the first pregnancy and my second, I had 2 miscarriages. But I'm convinced it's because of male factor infertility as well.
Mm,
He did
mhm.
eventually get tested, and
Yeah.
his testosterone was very low.
Mm,
As long as with other issues,
yeah.
he at first he didn't want to admit it. You know, he was like,
Yeah.
Of course it's you because you have
Yeah.
PCOS.
Oh
It
yeah.
cannot be me
Oh
because
yeah.
we already know that you are the
Yeah.
problem."
Yeah. And I'm
Um,
so glad that you're saying this. And I think it's so helpful for women to hear because we are always likely to blame ourselves first. And I think in
mm,
the fertility journey, we forget that it's the man and the woman, not just the woman. The man's role is almost just as important, in conception. Obviously, he's not carrying the baby like we are, but we can't forget that the man plays a big role and that it's not always you. It's not always the woman that's having the problem. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
yeah, yeah. So he was put on a testosterone supplement, but he didn't take that. He just refused. I learned that with his tests, when he got that testing done and we got the results, I learned that high stress was a significant cause of those
Mhm.
problems. And
Mhm.
during those couple of years, with both miscarriages, one I know was I was physically burnt out. That's why that happened. But the other, I actually had three miscarriages, but two was between my son and my daughter's pregnancies, and the other one was between the second child and the third child.
Mm.
So it's a lot to try and remember, like, oh, that's this and this.
Yeah, it's a whole
When you're not
journey.
trying to remember and
Yeah.
think about it all the time. But yeah, the later one, I know I was physically burnt out, but the other two was abnormalities because of his poor lifestyle, like was extremely overworked, very
Mhm.
stressed, wasn't eating healthily. But eventually with my daughter, yeah, there's a lot to remember, but basically I know now that a lot of it was either my stress and overworking and his overworking and stress,
Mhm.
with all three of those, because I know, looking back, every time I felt pregnant and it was a healthy pregnancy was when we had about 3 months of taking it easy, less
Mhm.
stress. Maybe
Mhm.
it was right after like taking leave from work. We had like a month leave
Yeah.
from work.
Yeah.
And so we were relaxed. We were eating more healthily. We were more active.
Mhm.
That's basically the pattern that I can see looking back. Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense, right? And I think, we just live in such a high stress society and it's just kind of accepted like the hustle culture. But I think that's also really negatively impacting the hormones because, our body, this is what I'm always saying, our body is always prioritizing survival, right?
Mm,
And if we're in a high stress situation, whether it's, I mean, it's real stress, but it could be there's a actual threat to our lives, or maybe it's just something we perceive as stressful, the body's going to be pumping out cortisol, our stress hormone, at the expense of our other sex hormones, right? I mean, it uses the same raw material, which is cholesterol, actually. So your body takes cholesterol and it uses it to make either cortisol and or DHEA. Cortisol is your stress hormone, DHEA is your stress recovery hormone, but DHEA is also the parent hormone to your sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. And so if the body is in this ongoing survival stress situation, it's going to shunt all of its raw materials to make cortisol, to pump out cortisol, because we need cortisol to survive, right? To react, to survive. We die without it. The sex hormones are going to get on the back burner. And so often when I do hormone testing, I can see that someone's body has been pumping out cortisol, cortisol, cortisol for a long time, and their sex hormones are all low because it's about what we need to survive in that moment. Going back to our primal ancestors, we always use the example of like running away from a saber-toothed tiger, cavemen running away from a saber-toothed tiger. What did he need to do in that moment? Was he thinking about reproduction or was he thinking about running, fight or flight? He was thinking about fight or flight, right? So the body was not thinking about making good levels of sex hormones. They were thinking about, energy to run away and escape or fight. Our bodies are still that way. We have all this modern technology and these fast-paced lives. Our bodies are still the same bodies. We still have the same biology that our primal ancestors had thousands of years ago. So this is why we're in an environmental mismatch now. We're living in these fast-paced lives with lots of stress, with all these toxins, and yet we still have these primal bodies from thousands of years ago that have not evolved quick enough to be able to handle all of this. So no wonder fertility rates are down. No wonder people are having so many health issues and hormonal issues. We're not equipped to deal with this. So, the knowing that, but then it's like, okay, what are the small things we can do to start bringing some safety and some balance back into our lives. Like you were saying, like cutting out the toxins in the home, or, doing some healthy stress. We can't get rid of stress, but we can change how we deal with it, right? So having some healthy
Yeah.
stress management, taking regular breaks, getting enough rest, going outside, doing things to just kind of reconnect with nature, more how we used to live, right? Getting sunlight, things
Mhm.
like that, not spending our entire lives indoors under artificial lighting. Anything we can do to kind of reconnect with the natural cycles of the world is going to be beneficial for our health and hormones.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, and I also realized, like, as you and I are business owners, entrepreneurs, we are in the unique and really privileged circumstances where we can actually structure our business based
Mm-hmm.
on our temperament. So
Mm-hmm.
I am someone who I feel stressed very easily, but I don't immediately realize it. It's only when it's too late. Like it's already affected people around me, or I've
Yeah.
physically manifested it. That's when
Yeah.
I realized, oh, something's wrong. Like, why am I
Mm-hmm.
so stressed?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I need to look at this. So since I fell pregnant, now my third pregnancy, I just decided, I'm just sick of this. I'm sick of the cycle. I'm done with it. So I
Mm-hmm.
made like hectic changes in my business, so to dial right back down. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I basically shut down my business for months. I had one client for most of my pregnancy because that's
Mm-hmm.
all I could manage
Yeah.
with, with the brain fog that was hectic, like super bad. I refunded one client, which was a really big project. I had to refund the entire project. I said no to everything else in my pregnancy. And
Mm-hmm.
when I gave birth, I took 3 or 4 months off. I think it was 4 months, no client work. I was like, either I need to close down this business or completely build it back up from the ground. Like, I need to
Yeah.
reimagine everything about my business, about the
Yeah.
work I do, who I work with, everything. I cannot go through this again.
Yeah.
So made hectic changes to everything, and it's been so much better. It's like a breath of fresh air. Like, I actually don't feel apprehension or anxious about the next day at all. Like, when
Mm-hmm.
I close my eyes at night, I feel peace. When
Yeah.
I get up in the morning, I'm like excited for the day. I'm
Yeah.
I'm checking my messages, not because I'm stressed. What fire do I need to put out today, or
Mm-hmm.
what task is behind, or what is my
Yeah.
next deadline? I'm excited, and I'm actually
Yeah.
creating projects for myself. I actually have to pace myself because I have mental space for this creativity again, which
Mm-hmm.
I really miss that creativity. I can only be creative when I have a lot of mental space. So my capacity, I have to make much smaller than what it looks like on my calendar. I
Mm-hmm.
can't, I cannot plan my capacity around my time on my calendar. It doesn't work
Right.
because then I overbook myself.
Yeah.
Energy wise and mentally, I overbook myself. I cannot do that. I have
Yeah.
to think about the energy load of each thing that I want to do, and the
Mhm.
recovery time after I
Yeah.
do that thing.
Yeah.
So I want people to realize that that is a big thing that you have to consider. If you're in a career,
Mhm.
if you're like working for someone else, it's more challenging. But it's challenging in a business, and it's challenging in a career. It's not easier
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
we are in a business. It's just maybe more possible. There are more
Yeah.
possibilities.
Yeah. But I'm so
Yeah.
glad you brought that up, because I feel like we live in such a man's world. Like the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, that is set up for men to thrive. Like men do perfectly fine with that schedule. Monday through Friday, they get 2 days off. They're kind of, they don't go through the same, like we're like the moon, right? Women are like the moon. The moon goes through phases every month. So do we. We have hormonal fluctuations all month long. Men don't. They just have testosterone every day. They're very steady, just kind of, steady Eddie. And they do really well with, the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. That's not how we as women operate. Like we are, like you said, we're more about creativity. We are phases of the moon. And so one thing that I've really enjoyed, and it's just been such an eye opener for me, starting my own practice, is realizing that I don't need to schedule myself the way a business would schedule me, that I don't need to run my business like Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, the same output every single day, every day of the week, every, week of the month. That's not how we as women optimize. And so it's been so amazing because a big thing that I teach is cycle syncing. I love teaching this, and it's like aligning your diet, your fitness, with your hormones. And so that's something I teach all the time in my practice is, how do we align those? How do we tweak our fitness and our workouts and our diet depending on where we're at hormonally? Our needs are going to be changing throughout the month, every month, kind of like a pattern, just like the moon. But that also applies to our energy levels, to our creativity, and to how we run a business. So that's been such a kind of exciting journey for me to learn how to implement. It's almost kind of like taking your power back, like stepping into your feminine power. There's nothing wrong with the masculine, but we're not men. We're women, right? So in order to be powerful and be our best, we need to step into our feminine power. And so rather than trying to act like men and run a business and hustle like how a man would, that's fine for his testosterone, but it's not for us. So realizing that, okay, let's do more like, the phases, like the phases of the moon. So I know that, and the cool thing is it's pretty much the same for every woman because we all go through the same monthly hormonal fluctuations, right? So, in the beginning of the month when we have our cycle, we have a period, we have estrogen coming in. Yeah, I mean, if a woman has a difficult period, this might be a little troublesome. But however, once we're a few days in and we have good levels of estrogen, especially leading up to ovulation, which is about day 14. So if day one's the first day you bleed, you ovulate about day 14. You're going to have rising levels of estrogen. Estrogen is so good for our brain. It's good for our ability to be social and to connect and to be friendly. We've got good communication skills. And so this is a wonderful time for us to like go on a podcast or give a talk or network, meet new people. We bring in new clients because we've got that like friendly, nurturing, like estrogen is driving us, right? And then when we get an ovulation, we have some testosterone coming in as well. So that's when we probably feel like superwoman. That's when we can like do the most. We have the most capacity. You can get a ton of things done. It's a great time for manifesting, for planning. If you want to create new projects, build a new course, do something new, do it during that time. You're going to shine. If you're working for somebody and you want to ask for a raise, or if you want to have a difficult conversation, that's the time to do it because you're going to be the most primed to have success during that time. Then after that, all of our hormones kind of dip, and then we go into that progesterone phase, which is kind of the week before we get our period. That time is usually when we're a little more irritable. We have a little less energy. We're craving carbs, right? So, in us being able to design our own business and our own schedules, that's going to be the week we want to take it a little bit easier. We don't want to bring in necessarily new clients or create all new projects during that week, but we still do have some strengths, right? We're really good at identifying problems. And that's probably why men kind of say, oh, is it, are you PMSing right now? Because we're just really good at identifying problems during that time, right? So, that time you can take advantage in your business, kind of leave the creative projects and things to the side and think about, okay, what are the ways that I can improve my business? What are the details that I can hone in on right now and write down, what are the improvements I can make? And then you can put those into practice next cycle around when you get your hormones coming back in. So that has been such a revelation to me. And the more that I align my business, how I run my business with that, the more energy I have, the less stressed I am, the more I thrive. Like it's just opened this whole new world to me. And so this is something that I'm really excited to be, teaching hopefully more in the future, because I feel like this is something that we as women, we have this superpower inside of us and we don't even always know it. But when we tap into it, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool. I only really learned about that, I think, last year. I mean, that's not something that's often talked about. So I think
No.
this is a really great topic, especially if you speak to entrepreneurs about this, because we can basically design our own
Oh, yeah.
businesses around, you can design your business model around that, like how you work best and
Yeah.
energy wise and how you like to use your energy. There's different things that need energy from you, or mental energy or physical energy. And if certain things in your business takes up too much energy, you don't have to devote your energy to that. You can either do away with it completely, delegate it, or systemize everything. So there are different options. You don't have to feel like, oh, this thing is super exhausting, but I have to do it.
Right.
No, there's no such thing as you definitely have to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe someone has to do it, or something can do it. Like you
Yeah.
can systemize it, you can automate it, you can delegate it, you can outsource it. There are
Yeah.
options, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be super expensive. So people should be really open-minded about how to solve their problems. Don't think like, oh, only know about this solution, so and I can't afford the solution, or I'm not ready for that solution, so I have to sit with the problem.
Yeah.
It's be open-minded and be curious.
Yeah, I love that advice. And I think that we as women are only now just starting to discover this about ourselves and about our power and about how we operate differently. But it's such an exciting thing because like you were just saying, there's no reason for you to be stuck. There's really not even any limits, right? Because if something is just not working, there's always another way to do it and to get around it. So I absolutely love that. So I just kind of wanted to go over I know you kind of mentioned this already, but let's go back to PCOS and some kind of natural solutions. So if we have any women listening who are dealing with hormonal imbalances who are diagnosed with PCOS or maybe suspect it, they haven't been able to get that diagnosis, but they're like, oh yeah, I have this symptom or I have that symptom. So let's just go through a list of some of the natural solutions that most helped you and that most can help with PCOS.
Yeah. So the two biggest things, foundational things, easiest start because there's a wide range of things you can do within these two categories. It's up to you to see what is within your reach, what is manageable, cost-wise, time-wise, what is not complicated for you. So start as easy or as much as you want. One is remove endocrine disrupting chemicals from everywhere, but start with one category every month. Doesn't have to be expensive, can be DIY. You can use one thing for multiple uses. There really is no excuse. There's no excuse with this.
Yeah, like switching over to natural, right? So even if you have all conventional products in your home, when you use the rest of a bottle and you're going to go replace it, that's a time when you can choose a chemical-free version. So whether it's makeup, whether it's soap, whether it's shampoo, whether it's lotion, laundry detergent, I mean, anything that you're using to clean yourself, to put on your body, in your home, to wash or clean with, all of these things. And, getting things that are fragrance free, because that's another big one. Synthetic fragrances are so toxic. And unfortunately, I'm also talking about perfume, even if it's French perfume. It can be the fanciest, it could be Chanel, it's still toxic, right? So getting things that are either fragrance free or they're scented with natural essential oils, nothing with synthetic fragrances, that is so toxic to your hormones. So if you're like, what's something big I can do? Stop wearing perfume. That's a huge one. Stop letting your men wear cologne. That's a huge one that's just killing your hormones. So switching out plastic, switching to natural products.
Yeah, that's big. And most natural replacements can be used for multiple things within your house. So it's not like you have to go with these expensive products. Most of them are greenwashed anyway.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the bigger companies that are most well known for organic or green or eco-friendly, they're not really eco-friendly.
It's just the label looks like they are.
The regulations around this is so dodgy. Like there's so much gray area. You cannot trust just any. Like there are very, very few companies I buy from, because I know, I've done my research and I know definitely that they only use certain ingredients and the problematic ingredients are not included.
Yeah.
I won't just try anything, especially when it's something super popular, like it's in convenience stores. It might not be 100% what I'm looking for. And if it's like, I don't want to badmouth MLM, but most of the greenwashed companies that I've come across in the US are greenwashed. So I've bought from a few that are not greenwashed, like they are legit. But unfortunately, the majority are not 100% toxin free, or at least they do have harmful, like you get natural toxins, like toxins from nature, and you get toxins that are man-made. I'm talking now about toxins that are endocrine disruptors. Unfortunately, that's something that you have to double check for yourself. You can't just trust any label just
Yeah.
because it says eco-friendly or natural or toxin
Oh
free.
yeah, they'll like, and I don't know about your guys's like labeling laws and all of that, but in the US, you can put natural, you can write natural on any product and it means nothing. Like legally, it doesn't have to be natural. It's just a word that they put on products.
Yep.
So they'll make the label look green or brown, and maybe they'll have a picture of plants and it'll say natural. It doesn't mean they've actually removed the chemicals. So here we have the environmental working group and they have a database called Skin Deep. So that's what I'm always telling my clients to use. Like go and put your products in there. You can put the brand or you can just look up individual ingredients and it will give like a toxicity rating or like a safety rating from 1 through 10 telling you like, is this toxic?
Yeah.
What are the
Yeah.
chemicals in there that are harmful? And it gives it a grade. So that way you get a independent third party review of if that's actually safe or not. So that's what I'm always using to check up on my products because just looking at the label isn't enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the other thing that's helped me a lot, and more recently, it's only really the last year and a half that I realized for my body how to hack this was blood sugar control. Now, I know in America, I don't know if it's available here, but I know with you, there are um, blood sugar tests, like devices that you can buy, and you can monitor your blood glucose throughout the day. So that's a really great way to see how your body responds to certain foods and how
Yeah.
you combine foods. Because it can get really complicated. It's not as simple as this food or that food. It's in combination with which food,
Yeah.
at what time of the day, did you just get up? So for me specifically, I know, for example, I cannot eat within the first hour after I woke up. So I have to wait at least an hour or two because this I've only recently learned, so I might explain this wrong, but basically it is as your cortisol rises, that's how your metabolism rises as well, and your sugar, how you use sugar and how you respond to sugar in your diet or glucose, how you create sugar or how your pancreas excretes sugar. When your sleep hormones are still at a high level, you will dump more sugar into your body, or that response won't be as healthy as when your sleep hormones are lower and your cortisol is higher. So you have to wait until you're completely awake, like you are running around already, you're doing things. That's a better time to eat. Especially for me, I see throughout the entire day, I feel a massive difference. Not just in the morning, the whole day, my sugar response is better if I eat a little bit later. So now I'm just used to, starting my day, and then when I take my first break around 9 or 10 a.m., I'll have my breakfast.
Yeah. That's such a good point too, is like I know that I don't like eating first thing in the morning. I usually don't eat until like 11, sometimes even noon. And I hear that from a lot of women saying like, "Oh yeah, I can't eat first thing in the morning," but that makes so much sense. So if you don't feel like eating first thing in the morning, you definitely don't have to. That is okay. And that kind of ties into another thing that can be helpful for blood sugar regulation is intermittent fasting. So that can be a really helpful thing for people with PCOS that are looking to have better blood sugar control, is just going at least 13 hours overnight from your last meal of the day to the first meal the next morning. Now, as you get more experience with this, you can push it out further and fast for longer. The 13 hours is just, if you haven't fasted before, but giving your insulin a rest, right? Giving your body a rest from metabolizing, that's going to be so good to help better blood sugar control over time. So the more you can incorporate some, for fasting overnight, extending that out by a few hours, maybe having a day a week where you do like a longer fast, because I'm always about cycling things in and out. I think if you do the exact same thing every single day, the exact same way, your body will adapt to it. But I think it's great to have a day where, like, I have one day a week, 3 weeks out of the month. So not the week before my period, but the other 3 weeks, I have one day where I fast for an entire day. It's like a reset for my metabolism. That works so well. I used to have really bad blood sugar problems. I couldn't go 20 or 30 minutes without eating because my blood sugar was so dysregulated. And now I've worked up to it, but now I can do an entire day and I'm totally fine. It's amazing what you can train your body to do. So some light intermittent fasting. Also, like you were saying, having protein with every meal, eating your protein
That's
first, because
huge.
that helps keep your blood sugar
Mhm.
stable. So even if you are having some pasta or some rice, which of course you should keep to a minimum, if you have protein with it and eat the protein first, it's going to help keep your blood sugar more stable. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big thing for me. Even now recently, when I had to work on releasing a little bit more weight, specifically fat, now with my postpartum period, I it wasn't really intentionally, but for a week or two, I was mostly carnivore, like meat focused in my diet.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
ate almost only animal products. So that
Yeah.
included that in healthy organic meats. So for whatever reason, I can't remember why, I ended up eating mostly carnivore for about 2 weeks, and I was walking a lot. Um, and that helped me release a lot of weight very quickly. That
Mhm.
wasn't my intention at the time, but it ended up happening, and it was such a revelation to me. Oh, this background.
Sit closer.
It's like, who am I focusing on, the baby or you?
Yeah, it's focusing on him. It's like, oh, he's so darn cute.
Goodness, am I disappeared? I don't. Okay. Yeah. So since those 2 weeks, that experience, I've been really focusing a lot on hello. This is really funny. Imagine them watching the video and they're like, where did she disappear to?" Goodness. Yeah. So yeah, since then I've been focusing on a lot more meat in my diet, and it's helping my focus and my mental energy. It's
Mhm.
amazing. So
Mhm.
much more energy and stamina, like running after 3 kids. And I mean, he's quite
Mhm.
heavy right now.
Yeah.
He just turned a year in December. So it's a lot to manage for one person
Oh,
all
yeah.
day. So that's been huge for me. I don't have as much veg in my diet anymore, but I don't really feel like I'm missing it, and I feel very healthy.
I'm the
So
same way. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
the same way because I think, as a dietitian, I was originally programmed in school to like half your plate of every plate should be veggies and
yeah.
and plenty of healthy carbs and this and that. Now, I'm not completely against carbs, but I do notice that I eat a more carnivore-esque diet most of the month, less veggies, more meat, like protein is always the priority, except, the week before my period, we do need some carbs then because progesterone, that's when progesterone's coming in and progesterone does need some carbs. But things like root veggies, fruit, like potatoes, squashes, like you said, pumpkins, citrus fruits, tropical fruits, those are excellent things to bring in during that time. So if you're focusing on like you got your protein and then you got some fruit, that's perfect. I agree with you. I feel so much better eating that way, and definitely, having dealt with blood sugar issues in the past myself, now I don't have those problems, especially with a more carnivore-ish type diet.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, I've even tried vegan before, like completely 100% vegan for 3 months after
Mhm.
I burnt out a couple of years ago. Um, that was when I had my second miscarriage.
Mhm.
And it helped me heal a few things, but I definitely comparing that with this, I think this is better for my body specifically.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I would definitely agree about the protein. And that brings me to weights because you were saying like weight training. That's another really good thing. Strength training specifically for PCOS is so good. So working in some strength training, some weight training.
Yeah. That was something to get used to. Initially, I didn't really feel like I would enjoy it, but
Mhm.
ended up enjoying it a lot more,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot than spinning or jogging on the treadmill that I did before that.
Yeah. And now you're stronger to lift heavy little bundles like this.
Yes, yeah, especially.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. And then, you mentioned that you had really good success with the maca root. I
Mm.
think that's a great one. Any other herbs that you would mention? I know you said you took a blend.
Yeah, the Eve Care, I can't remember everything that contains, but at a different time I also used Vitex. You
Mm.
mentioned that before.
I
So
use that
Vitex,
one for hormonal
yeah,
balance and I really like it. So
that's
Vitex, it's also known as Chase Tree, so you can
mm,
see it either way.
yes.
That's a really good one as well for hormonal balance. I do like that. And then I know another thing that can help with PCOS, especially with the blood sugar dysregulation, is inositol. So
Oh
there's
yeah.
there's kind of two different forms, and I like to do both of them. So there's myo-inositol and there's D-chiro-inositol. So I think a good quality inositol supplement is going to have both, because then you have one that's helping more with regular ovulation, and then the other which is helping with blood sugar control. So that can be another helpful thing for PCOS as well. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, I think somebody might be done over there.
Yeah, he's like, I want to go to bed again.
Yeah, it's bedtime. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Christine. This has been such a good conversation. I feel like this is going to be so helpful for any woman who's dealing with PCOS or even just hormonal imbalances. Because, everything that we talked about, even if you don't have PCOS, this is going to be helpful to balancing your hormones. So this is really
I hope
valuable
so.
information. So thank you so much for sharing your story and being so candid. I think that's something that, inspires us the most, right? Is when we hear these personal stories of what did you go through and how did you come out of it on the other side, right? How did you heal? So I love that. How can people find you?
Yeah, well, I'm on Facebook, just my full name. You can find me on Facebook. I'm on Threads as well, Thriving Wellpreneur. So you can share those two links. Those are the two places that I spend most of my time right now.
Perfect. Okay, I will put those links below. So thank you so much for joining us today. I had a great time.
Thank you.